Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. In this video, we're going to talk about variables and how you can store different data types in variables and use them within your Mule application. So before we jump into the slides, please make sure to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out on any new notifications and videos from us. Let's get started. So let's start with an introduction of a variable. So what is a variable in DataWeave? Variables are a way to store values with a given name so that they can be later reused from different parts of your code, making the code cleaner and sometimes even more performant as values are calculated once. Declaring a variable. You can create or update variables in these ways. You can use the setVariable component in AnyPoint Studio to declare a variable. You can use a target variable from within an operation. We will discuss this in the demo. And you can use DataWeave transformation component to declare a variable. You can also use scripting component in scripting modules to declare a variable. So now we have covered what variables are. Let's talk about some advantages of storing values in a variable. So the first advantage is readability and maintainability. What I mean by that is assigning a value to a variable with a meaningful name can make your code more readable and easier to understand. It enhances the maintainability of your application as other developers can quickly comprehend the purpose of the variable. The next point is reusability, which is very important. If you're building an application in MuleSoft, variables allow you to store values that you might use multiple times in your application. By storing values in a variable, you can reuse the same value across different parts of the application, reducing redundancy in your code. I will show that in the demo, how you can use a variable multiple times to enhance reusability of a component. The third point is dynamic values. Variables in MuleSoft can hold dynamic values that are computed or fetched at runtime. This allows you to adapt different scenarios and input data without having to hardcode fixed values in your application. What I mean by this is you can create a key value pair in your property YAML and use them in a variable that will dynamically change during runtime based on which environment your application is running at. The next point is scope management. MuleSoft allows you to define the scope of variables. Depending on where you define the variable, it can be a global variable, meaning you can access the variable across the entire application. It can be flow specific. You can access the variable within a specific flow, or it can be a session specific variable where you can access that variable per user session. It also enhances debugging. When you are debugging your Mule application, which is very important before deploying the application in production, having well-named variables can make it easier to track the flow of data and identify potential issues. The last but not least advantage of using a variable is it promotes best practices. Utilizing variables encourages the separation of concerns in your integration flows, making your applications more modular and following best practices in software development. So without further ado, let's jump into the demo where we will be showcasing you how you can define a variable in different ways in AnyPoint Studio. And then we will head to DataWeave Playground where I will showcase different use cases on how to use a variable in a transform message. So let's jump into the demo. So for this demo, I have created a Mule project in my AnyPoint Studio. The name of my Mule project is Variable Declaration. I have just dragged and dropped a flow in the application. So there is no event source and no event processor at the moment. So what I will do, I will simply grab a scheduler as an event source. And the time unit for this scheduler will be in minutes. And I will show you guys how you can declare your variable in multiple ways. So the first way is to use an event component called setVariable. So I will just search that in my palette. So as you can see, this set variable is part of a core module provided by MuleSoft. So if you create any project, it will be visible to you. You don't need to add any dependency. So I'll simply drag and drop this set variable in the process section. And to set a variable, you have to pass two parameters. You have to pass a name and a value. So for this demo, I will just pass the name as name, and the value, I would like it to be a string. So you have to click this, which will switch to expression mode. And since I'm passing a string, I have to put it within quotes. So I will put between two mules, and the name can be set name, or you can say name var, just for readability purposes. And after that, I am just gonna put a logger and try to call this name variable. So I'm just gonna copy this. So in order to log a variable in a logger component, you have to switch the message parameter to expression mode. And now you have to use a keyword, which is vars. And if you click dot, it will show you the variable that exists in this application. So in this case, we can use our name variable. So this application will simply log the name of the variable that we have declared in the set variable component. So I will just add a breakpoint here, and I'll try to debug this application to show you guys how it works. The application got started, and since we have a breakpoint here, the application will stop here. Debugging is very important to test your application before deploying it to your production server. So right now, as you can see in the vars, the size is 0, meaning there is no variable defined yet. So I will just step into, and now there is a variable defined, and the variable name is name, and the value is between two mules, and I'm just using a logger to log that value. So if you see the console, you will see the value of the variable that we just logged. So that is one way to declare a variable in Anypoint Studio. Let me show you another way. So I'll change the perspective. I'll click OK. So instead of using a set variable component, I will use a transform message to declare a variable. So again, I'll just search for transform message, and I'm just going to drag and drop it here in my application. And in transform message right now, you can transform the payload, whatever you're receiving from scheduler. Since we are not receiving anything, I will just update it. I'll click edit, and the output will be a variable here in this case, and the name would be name. And the output should be in JSON, or you can simply remove this and just put a string called between two mules. Since we have not changed the name of the variable, the logger should be working still. I'll save it. I'll add a breakpoint here, and I'll try to debug this application again. The application is running as expected, and we have a breakpoint here, so it stopped here. So if I step into, as you can see, there is again a variable defined, and if you see inside vars, the variable is name, and the value is between two mules. And if I step into, if I see the console, the logger will again log the variable with the value between two mules. So instead of using, simple set variable again and again, if you want to declare multiple variables, you can simply use a transform message and add as many variables as you want by using this plus sign. So if I want to declare another variable, a last name, I can simply declare it. Like this. So I'm not using multiple set variables. I'm simply using one transform message to declare multiple variables. So that's how advanced developers declare variables in Anypoint Studio. So another way to declare a variable is by using target variable from within an operation. What do I mean by that? I'll show you guys. I'll change the perspective to Mule design and I'll delete this transfer message component, and I will get a database component, and I will, for example, use this database insert. And if I try to open this component, if you see the advanced section here, if I click on this advanced section, it allows us to store the output in a variable using the target variable parameter. So what I just need to do is I just need to declare the variable name. So if I type NAME, the output that comes from the database will be stored in this variable name. So we don't need to explicitly define a set variable component and then use that component to store the output of the database. We can simply use the advanced section and store the variable in the target variable parameter and use it. That's how you can declare variables in multiple formats. Now I'm just gonna head to DataWeave Playground and I will show you guys different use cases on how to use a variable in transform message. So let's jump into DataWeave Playground now. Now we are in our DataWeave Playground. So here the input is simply a message which says hello world. And in the script, we are just retrieving the value of message and the output is hello world, which is expected. So how you can declare a variable in a script? It's very simple. So right after output application JSON or before these 3 dashes, you need to declare a variable. So to declare a variable, you have to use a keyword called var, V-A-R, and then you need to define the name of the variable. In this case, I will simply type NAME, name, and you need to define the value of this variable. I'll simply define a string with the value between 2 mules. If I want to retrieve the value of this variable name, I can simply do that by just calling this variable name after the 3 dashes. And in the output, you can see it recognized that it's a variable defined and the value is between 2 mules. So that's how you can declare a variable in the script. So you can use different data structures. So here I have used a string. You can use an array. And in the output, you will see an array. And also you can store an object in a variable. To store an object, we need to define key value pairs. So I will say name is between 2 mules, title, subscribe, and what you need to do is to like this video. Do is a keyword, so I can't use do. So I will just use caps D and O. So you can define an object in a variable as well. So this is how you can store different data types in a variable. If you want to store a payload in a variable, you can still do that by simply typing payload, and it will store the payload in the variable, and you can simply use DataWeave script to call that variable. So this was a quick video on how you can declare variables in Anypoint Studio. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.